Miracle at Camp Friendship. Chapter 2. Getting on the Road. Friday morning I was so excited about the trip that I had a very hard time concentrating on my schoolwork. When lunchtime finally rolled around, I swallowed half my lunch without chewing it. Mum has always reminded me not to do that. Later, as we were loading the bus, I felt as if I had swallowed a rock instead of a roast beef sandwich. The boys loaded their stuff first, since it took the girls longer to get changed into their casual clothes for the trip. When Ronnie Vane showed up, all he had was a sleeping bag and a small backpack. His pack matched him perfectly. It was slim and trim. "I'll just throw it up here in the overhead rack," Ronnie said, as he climbed aboard the bus to stake out his seat. Mr. Frenson and Mr. Thriftmore, who were doing the packing, seemed satisfied with that arrangement. Ronnie, with his black shock of hair bouncing, ran off, calling over his shoulder, "I'm going to find Hapford." If I were to describe Ronnie's personality, I suppose I would say he is likeable but scrappy. In my mind, I predicted that having him along was likely to present some interesting situations. Finally, Sandy McMurcy and Christy Lovejoy showed up. "Mr. Frenson, where do you want our luggage?" asked Sandy. Her red bangs were damp with perspiration as she wrestled with the biggest duffel bag I have ever seen. Christy's was a little smaller, but it was bulging more. What were really bulging were Mr. Frenson's eyes. "Girls, we're only going for the weekend. How could you possibly need so much for such a short trip?" "It's just things." That was all Christy said, but her brown eyes danced with mystery as she and Sandy skipped away. What could he say? Their permission slip had stated 1 bag, and they each had only 1 bag. "Don't worry, Mr. Frenson, my bag won't take up much room." It was Miss Content. She had a tightly wrapped sleeping bag and only a small overnight case that fit easily under a seat. Mr. Frenson smiled approvingly. When all the suitcases, gym bags, overnight cases, sleeping bags and those 2 big duffel bags were finally loaded and everyone seemed to be aboard, Mr. Frenson started the bus. Miss Content counted heads. Everyone was there and ready to go, except one. "We really do need to get on the road," Pastor Gentle commented. The hold-up was Susie Selfwill. When she had heard about the retreat and that Ronnie was going, she invited herself. Miss Content and the girls agreed it was a good opportunity to get to know her better, but now she was late. So what else was new? Go without her. That was Ronnie's solution, and I half agreed. He reasoned. She knew what time we were leaving. I was here on time. She should have been too. He had no sympathy or patience for that matter. It would be nice if I could say it was the last time he showed that spirit. Mr. Frenson hated to do it, but we were finally forced to leave without Susie. "We really can't wait any longer. The folks at the camp are expecting us," was the final conclusion. I believe Christy, Miriam, Sandy and Miss Content were genuinely disappointed that Susie would not be going. As hard as it was to get along with Susie, the girls cared about her. They wanted to be her friend. She did not have an easy home life. Her mother worked long hours at a nearby factory, and Susie was often on her own. Our bus had just turned the corner at the end of the block when a whirlwind of dark hair flapping, sweatshirt sleeves and sagging socks came flying toward us. It was Susie, and she was waving like a fluttering flag. Mr. Frenson pulled up to the curb and opened the folding bus door. She immediately began to make excuses. "Why did you leave early? If I had had more time, I could have found my new gym bag. The zipper broke on this old one, and my clothes fell out all over the sidewalk. I almost lost my backpack too. I laid it down with my sleeping bag while I was picking up my clothes, and some stray dog tried to carry it off." Miss Content pushed her way to the front of the bus, while the rest of us just sat staring in amazement. Amazing. That word pretty much well sums up Susie. Quickly, Miss Content broke our stunned silence. Susie, do you have your signed permission slip?" "Right here." Susie proudly whipped it out and handed it to Miss Content. She certainly was full of surprises. Next, she proceeded to jostle her way past several seats until she reached the one where Miriam was sitting. She plopped herself and her backpack down with a big sigh. Miss Content stood on the bus steps with Susie's sleeping bag and dishevelled gym bag at her feet. She and Pastor Gentle looked at each other helplessly. What other challenges might Susie present before these 2 days were over?